So, hello, fellow Rocket team members. Today, on Discussing All Things Leadership podcasts, we're going to be discussing leading in all directions and exploring leadership influence and different variations of managing up. Can y'all please introduce yourself to the audience? What you do for a living, what your goals are.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So my name is Crystal Adams. Currently I am self-employed. I tend to focus a little bit more on financial consulting, business consulting, and just helping other managers find ways to be more efficient with the way that they work and manage with their teams. Prior to that, I worked for over 20 years in the transportation industry and the accounting department. So I've worked with a lot of different teams, a lot of different leadership styles, a lot of different people. And I finished my career earlier in the year as a corporate accountant.
Oh, amazing. What about you?
So hi, my name is Benjamina. I currently am a project manager and I have been in this space for not so long. I just started my project management journey. Prior to that, I was a Scrum Master in the financial space and then transitioned to becoming a project manager. So I currently work as a project manager and decided to pursue my master's in it to give me that formal education on project management.
Perfect. And what about you, Alexis?
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here to discuss all things leadership. My name is Alexis. I am currently a filing specialist at a payroll service company in the Woodlands. I've been in this line of work coming up on a year now, and I'm very excited to dive deeper into this discussion of leadership with all of you.
And thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I'm Christa Hedgpeth, and right now I currently am a talent acquisition specialist for Methodist Health Systems. I do a lot of our recruiting for retirement communities throughout Texas. We have 13 of them. So a lot of it is, hiring nurses, med aides, nurse assistants, and I'm pursuing my MBA currently in hopes of getting a leadership job in the future. When I first got my bachelor's in HR management, it was back in 2019, and then COVID happened and it shut the world down. But I was reporting to a human resources business partner at the time. And so I was really ingrained into a lot of, what my boss was doing. I had the greatest boss coming out of school right off the bat. He was so amazing. And it really made me want to do the leadership that he showed me and all the things that I learned in that short amount of time before COVID hit is what I want to give to other people. Because since then I've had, other jobs and I've, realized what does work, what doesn't work, and wanting to get back into the HR field after taking some time off. And it's been a journey. It really has been, but I absolutely love, that rapport and that relationship that I had with my boss when I did come out. So that's who I am. And then, of course, we have all the Rocket team here today. There are my, fellow colleagues, and we have worked on projects in the past and looking forward to diving deep into, leading in all directions and exploring leadership, in those, in their influence in all directions and also gain a perspective of what, they've been through. And that being said, we're going to go, into the grid of it. Today, we're talking about the behavioral approach to leadership. Basically, the idea that great leadership comes down to what you do, not necessarily who you are. And the big takeaway is this. Leaders operate through two main behaviors, whether it's task behavior or relationship behaviors. Getting things done and taking care of people. So with this model, it's a huge shift from older theories that focus on traits like whether you're born confident or born charismatic. And instead, the behavioral approach says, nope, leadership can be learned. And that's why so many leadership programs today still use it. But it's not perfect, as we know. And with that, one thing I love about this approach is that it helps leaders see themselves clearly. Like, how do I act? Am I task heavy, relationship heavy? What do people notice about me? And the downside is that it doesn't really tell you, what works or what to do in every situation. Research has found, this one magic behavior that works everywhere, and that it's context. Context matters a lot. And honestly, followers' perceptions and surveys, they can be biased, and that makes, the data a little messy. So for example, the Blake Moon's grid, it's a classic framework. If you haven't heard it, through a class somewhere or online or, another podcast, it's basically a map on how leaders, fall, or it's a map that leaders fall on that tells you how much they care about people and results. So whether it's impoverished leadership, low on both, giving the, bare minimum energy to that role, or team leadership, he was high on both supportive and driven. And that is the ideal, where you want to fall on this map. They also said that, leaders usually have a dominant style, but they slip on a backup style when, things are stressful and, high level. And they believe that the team management style is effective in most settings, even though the grid doesn't really emphasize adapting to these different situations. So, with that, grid seminars today, they actually help people spot their ineffective habits and helps them reset it. So, going into, what we're discussing today, with the, top-down, bottom-up leadership approaches, connecting it to the real world leadership directions with top-down leadership, it is usually more task-focused. So with that, setting goals, giving direction, but without the relationship behaviors, it can feel really heavy-handed. So on the other hand, with bottom-up leadership, it leans on relationship behaviors, empowering people, listening, giving voice. So this is, exactly why the behavioral approach struggles to prescribe a single best way to lead, as, the context shifts and, what people need from you. Another thing to consider is, culture. It really does matter. And a great example would be, paternalistic leadership. It's strong authority paired with strong care. It works really well in certain places, but it also might feel very overbearing. So again, the situation changes the effectiveness of behaviors. Overall, the bottom line, the behavioral approach is an amazing self-awareness tool. It helps leaders see their patterns, understand how they come across, and figure out what to adjust. But it won't predict who will be a great leader in every situation, because no behavior works everywhere. After all things considered, I have a few questions for everyone. I would really love y'all's input and how it ties into your own everyday professional lives. So Crystal, when you consider the bottoms-up approach and you experience a dependable employee's performance has dropped lately, you're unsure if it's burnout, personal stress, or lack of motivation, how do you approach this issue while balancing compassion and accountability?
Okay, so my primary focus is to first connect with the employee through empathy. I will typically begin with a question such as, I've noticed you seem a bit off lately. Is everything okay? I feel like this approach allows me to reinforce the relationship and create a comfortable space for the employee. Hopefully, it enables them to share any factors that may be contributing to whatever is causing the decline in their performance. From there, I'll typically transition the conversation back into their work. So I'll ask a question such as, how can I help you get back on track? Is there anything I could do to help you prioritize or reorganize the tasks that you've been assigned? This method generally demonstrates genuine care, and it's also enabling me to maintain accountability by using a relationship-first approach that leads naturally back into task correction. As an example, I've had an employee that was experiencing challenges at home. her husband's work hours had increased, which required her to assume more responsibilities with their children while also balancing work. So after she shared that information with me, we were able to adjust her schedule, which allowed me to allow more flexibility, allowed her to focus more on work during times when she had additional support at home. So typically as a manager, I aim to adopt a middle of the road style. So it's one that prioritizes the well-being of the team and also prioritizes successful completion of our tasks. In practice, this basically just means we're supporting personal growth and positive change while keeping the team aligned with all of our important objectives.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And Benjamina, when thinking about a scenario where the subordinate checks in with the leader or their boss, about project progress with incorporating, the managing up and the bottoms up direction of leadership. For example, a subordinate asks their boss, "Do you have a minute? I wanted to check in about how things are going for the team. I've noticed we've been pushing really hard to meet the deadline, which I know is important. But I think some of us are starting to feel overwhelmed. Maybe we could build in quick check-ins to see how everyone's doing. It might help keep morale up while we finish everything."
Right. Thank you, Krista, for that. Working myself as a project manager, I tend to have many of those opportunities for the, bottom up approach as well as the, top down approach as well. And it has happened in scenarios. I'll give you one scenario where it's happened, right? Especially with me as an employee. I realized that we have a lot of one-on-one meetings. Bosses have one-on-one meetings with their subordinates, or how are you doing? How's the work going? And that's quite normal where you have the one-on-ones, because building that relationship, of course, will in turn affect the way they work, making sure that they're fine so they can execute their task correctly. But one thing that I saw that was missing as a scenario where the employee or the I would say the team member actually walks up to their boss to say, okay, something is going off somewhere. How can we, there's a burnout going here, people are not sure what to do. And that's something that happened at my job. And so what I decided to do was create a community of practice and involve the bosses in there to say, okay, hey, let's get together as a team. This is what is not working for us. This is what is working. Leadership, how can you step in? So in that way, there was that balance of bottom up and top down approach, where even though there is the one-on-ones of the boss asking the team members, how are you doing? Or the manager, let me put it that way, asking team members, how are you doing? The team members also have the opportunity to say, hey, there's burnout here in this team. We cannot accomplish this task because of this, what has been going on. So me creating the community of practice where we have all project managers there and their bosses there kind of created um, that level head for both approaches to actually work and to ensure that we are building that relationship for proper task execution. Thank you, Krista.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And I absolutely agree. I think, focusing on, your teammates and their well-being, even if it's a subordinate going to the leader about other people's well-beings, I think it's really important to have that relationship, and it helps with, getting the task done as well. So, Alexis, with the top-down approach in dealing with you saying maybe a silent manager, for instance, you finish a big project and get zero feedback, no good job, no discussion of lessons learned, and you want more development input. How can you ask for feedback and open the door for more constructive dialogue in the future?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that question. When you're put into a situation as an employee where your manager is a silent manager and maybe isn't providing you the feedback that you desire when it comes to your work, that's where you're put into a position where either you, as an employee, also stay silent and don't get the feedback that you want, you don't speak up for what you need, or you now are put into a position of, okay, maybe I need to manage up. Maybe I need to manage my manager on how to manage me. And that's kind of like a tricky thing to deal with. And I think a lot of people have been put in this type of position. And it can be scary. It can be scary doing that. So for me, as a filing specialist with the company I'm with now, this is a situation I have personally been put into. I started off at this company and um, I knew a lot of the people that were already here, but I did not know my manager. I did not have a relationship with her outside of work like I did a lot of the rest of our team. And so it was very new. And so for me, I went into it saying, okay, I need to build this relationship with her. I have a relationship with a good amount of the rest of the team due to knowing them outside of work, but I don't know my manager. So I go into it with relationship oriented. I go in get trying to get to know her, talk about her family, her kids, what she does on the weekend, that kind of thing, and quickly notice that my manager was not interested. That was not how she managed. That was not important to her. She was very much task oriented. And being task oriented is good in a way for her and how she manages. And she does a great job with our team. But when it comes to now me being put into a position where I have to manage up and kind of manage her on what I need when I needed feedback on projects and things like that, especially when I was first starting out and I was learning the filing system from scratch. I had no background knowledge on this position. I really needed that feedback. I needed to hear how I could do better. I needed that um, critique of my work. And when I didn't have that, it's like I felt like I was just kind of staying at a steady pace. I wasn't getting better, but I didn't feel like my work was getting worse. But I wanted to succeed. I wanted to do better. I wanted to show this company I could do what they hired me to do and exceed their expectations. So what I simply did was I scheduled a meeting with my manager, and knowing what I had learned quickly starting was that she was task oriented. So I did not go into this meeting, asking her about her weekend or talking about her kids or anything like that. I did not do that because I knew I would have lost the interest of my manager quickly if I started out our meeting like that. So instead, I went into my meeting with tasks. I had a list of things I wanted feedback on. I had a list of questions that I had based off of my work. I had questions written down based off of um, like feedback I had gotten from clients and like how I could do better from this. So I went in with that, and right off the bat, I impressed my manager by asking these task-oriented questions because that's what's important to her. That's how she thinks through and that's how she manages. And so that meeting went very well because I was able to meet her on her level, and we were able to get the feedback that I needed, and it even led to continuously getting feedback in the future. I still get feedback now, and even to the point where we have, feedback cards that we give out that she can fill out, training cards that can be constantly updated by me on what I feel I have done in certain tasks that I am assigned to do in my position. And then my manager also gets to rate me on that. And these are updated constantly, and also weekly one-on-one meetings to discuss the week projects and tasks being done to ensure that everything's flowing how it should. And that is the best way that I've gotten that feedback. So I do think that it is difficult to manage up. And I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, no, you should never manage your manager. But sometimes you do because not every employee is going to think or need the same type of attention from their manager as another. So it just depends. And I think that's where managers also have to learn how to manage their employees. They have their steady way of how they want to manage, but they also have to learn how to manage their employees and what their employees' needs are. That's what you do as a manager. So sometimes managing up can be very beneficial and not as scary as I think people make it sound when it first gets brought up. So I do think that this is a very important topic to discuss. and continue that open dialogue, that open feedback to come back and forth. And just a simple meeting and making little notes of how my manager worked is how I got there. And I think anybody could do it.
Well, so a question for everyone. What direction do y'all believe is more challenging, top down or bottom up?
Who's starting first? Okay, maybe maybe I can go first. I feel like the bottom up, I'm not mixing it up. The bottom up is more challenging whether a team member has to like check in on the manager. Um, yeah, Crystal hold me accountable here. Hope I'm using the right terms, but I think that's more challenging, right? Because sometimes there is the timidity can come into play, or am I supposed to do this? There is also what we call imposter syndrome, like, am I doing the right thing? I hope I don't get fired for meeting out with my boss and saying, oh, there's something happening within our team. I need to step up, or is it something you can do? So I feel like that's the more challenging aspect of this leadership aspect or behavioral leadership aspect. So I can throw the ball to Crystal, to hear her own side.
Yeah, so for me, I think managing down is actually more challenging, especially from the relation standpoint, because it definitely requires a lot of balancing responsibility for providing results for the team and the company, and then also the employee morale. I definitely think since effective leadership depends very strongly on relationships, this is probably where it becomes the most challenging when you're managing down. So this is one of those areas that I personally have to work very hard to improve on. My natural leadership style, I'm very highly task behavior oriented. I tend to prioritize defining roles, setting expectations, maintaining accountability, but then I have to remember how to balance a relationship focus with everybody on my team. That way it can help everybody kind of be accountable for everything, but I still have to remain approachable, supportive, and allow those relationships to grow without overshadowing everyone's performance. It's just one of those things that requires a lot of balance to demonstrate empathy and then also ensuring that your standards remain high. So for me personally, managing down is more challenging to me.
So I personally would say that managing up would be the most challenging. Um, Now I know personally that I rank pretty high in both relationship oriented and task oriented um, behavioral approach. So for me, that makes it easy in the fact that I can kind of bounce between one or another depending on the situation and depending on other people around me. But I think managing up would be the most challenging simply because of like the view that it puts on the situation. Because people look at it and say, oh, managing up, you shouldn't do that. Your manager is there to manage you. You're not there to manage your manager. And that can be a difficult task and mindset for employees or just people to overcome. That's a challenging thing. And sometimes you go into that, situation of where you do need to manage up and you almost think that you're doing something wrong, like you're disrespecting your manager as a manager. And I think if you go about it in the right ways, that's not what it is at all. It's actually very helpful to continue that growth of the company and that growth of the team that you're in with your manager. So I think that would be the most challenging, in my opinion, for people to do. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate everyone's, responses, y'all's times, that this discussion that we have, I think is so great that we address this. I think overall our team, Rocket Team, has agreed that each direction of leadership comes with its own set of challenges. But managing up does tend to require, the most attention. It's hard to stay focused on results while also trying to influence someone who might have more authority. And there's always the risk of, sounding too pushy or damaging to the relationships. Managing down, on the other hand, does test a leader's ability to show empathy while keeping the team on track and, under pressure. With that being said, in the end, we realize that the most effective leaders need to be adaptable, knowing when to lean on into a relationship and when to focus on performance. And, I think with, everything that we discussed here, it really touches every single point. I appreciate y'all, again, appreciate y'all's time, and join us, next time. Thank you for coming to the show, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.